Ladies and gentlemen, you are more than welcome to this episode 58 of the Coffee at 11 show, brought to you by wigwam.ie SME peer support. Delighted to be here, delighted that you've chosen to join us, and I'm delighted to welcome to the cafe my very special guest, a man I've admired for some years, Stephen Brown. Stephen, please say hi and show us a coffee mug if you have one.
Hello everybody, thanks for being here. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me, Colm.
Oh, indeed, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, Stephen. Let me tell you a little bit about Stephen before I bring the man in himself, if that's okay. So Stephen Brown, obviously his name, business name, will you hear this? Firewalking International and Self-Led Life. What does your business do, Stephen? Connection is at the core of my work. Connection to self, community and the environment. A lot of this work is done through high impact empowerment activities such as firewalking, glass walking, etc. And that's how I met this man first. First time I met him, he said, take off your shoes and socks. What? He says, hold my hand. What? And then he says, step onto this 6 feet of shattered, broken glass and you'll be fine. And I was because he led me through it. Beautiful stuff. Thank you. So how long established? It's been an evolution over the last 12 years, and the brand Firewalking International has been around for 7 of those. Self-Led Life is the newest offering into the mix. Really looking forward to hearing about that, Stephen. How many employees? Core team of 3 that deliver most events with a pool of about 15 people to draw upon. Wow, for extra support when needed. And then he goes on to say he's a man who invites change into his life with curiosity and freely shares what he learns with those he works with. His work is all about people, and he uses numerous experiences, activities and modalities to help people connect with themselves, their communities and their environment. He works with everyone from individuals seeking change to CEOs that want to bring change into their organizations. He has delivered events and training around the world, and when he isn't working, he is studying or off exploring with his family. And something nobody knows about Stephen, in his early 20s, he used to do a lot of work with young and adult offenders. And it was this work that began his interest in helping people connect with themselves, their communities and their environment. Disconnection, wait till you hear this, this is lovely. Disconnection is at the core of any dis-ease on the planet. Perfect stuff, perfect stuff. Stephen, boola bus for that. First boola bus of the show. Stephen, lovely to have you here. Genuinely lovely to have you here. I'm looking forward to this chat immensely. I've been waiting for this one. Please, in your own words, will you take us back to those early years? Bring us up. What formed the man that we see in front of us today, please?
Well, there's been many things that have formed the man that's sitting here today. The very interesting thing, or I find it interesting, is all the way through school from I was about 7 or 8, all what I wanted to do was study law. I had this great vision of me standing in a courtroom and arguing the bit out with people and winning cases. And that stuck with me until I was filling in my UCAS forms for university. And then I didn't go to university, and I actually went to Newcastle, County Down, and began an apprenticeship to train as an outdoor instructor. Because I'd already been doing quite a lot of outdoor work through scouts and summer camps, and it was just something, just loved being out in the water with people. So I followed my heart at that stage without really knowing that I was following my heart. And through that work, I got to do a lot of work with, as I said, young offenders. You know, I was running a program which was working with young offenders who had basically reached the end of the line in terms of what was going to be passed on to them from the judicial system. So they were young people who were going to face a long-term or a reasonably long prison term sentence, or they could enter into this program with us called Watershed. And the Watershed program, one of the most interesting things for me, it involved 3 residentials. There's a lot of work involved in it, but 3 residentials, and the 3rd residential was always the most volatile. It was the one where the young people would turn up with their drugs or their alcohol, where they would kick off, where there would be lots of pushing back against us who were working with them. And what that was really about was they had got so much out of working with us, but this was now the end of the program. And so it was actually safe. Them acting out was actually to keep within the program. So it was actually an act of safety. But on the face of it, how would people normally perceive that? Perceive it as, actually, they're just bad wee shits. but that actually wasn't the case. They were trying to look after themselves. It kind of brings back to what I've said to you before about this whole idea of connection. You know, disconnection happens in relationship, and connection also must happen in relationship. And so those young people were getting that connection whenever they were with us. But when they were going back to their home environments, to their everything else that was going on there, they were losing that safety. So they just fought against it. And for us, we had to pick up the pieces. But that was always the unfortunate side of that work. You know, it was never going to be something which would be ongoing. And that's why, you know, it's when we look at crime and antisocial behavior, like we often look at it through such a small lens, and we really need to see a much wider picture, you know.
Stephen, that's lovely. You know, I wrote down the question: why the third residential? Why would they kick off on the third and not the first one? And you've explained it beautifully, that you gave them the space to feel safe. Yeah, well done. You got. You followed your heart. You wanted to do law. Don't know where that came from. Law.
And it was because I was always argumentative as a kid.
I love it. Stephen, we've a few of those in the cafe, that's for sure. Listen, but you wanted to do law, and ladies and gentlemen, I want you to listen to this man's voice. For me, there's a beautiful tonality in his voice. I met Stephen several times, and most recently when I met him, when he had me walk across that shattered glass. By the way, you're forgiven, right? He had me walk across the shattered glass in my bare feet, and break an arrow with my neck, with the point in here, right, against a wall. I don't know. Anyway, but when I met you first, I said to you that you have the most friendly face that I've met. You know, it's almost monk-like, and I mean that in the nicest possible terms. There's a peace about you that exudes from you. And I hope you don't mind me saying that, because for me it's true. You have this lovely calm voice, this lovely demeanour, and see Sarah Ward giving you the boodle-bus for that. But Stephen, would you mind if we go a little bit further back?
Yeah, so...
That's because you shared with me pre-show those formative years that brought you to the space that you're in today, please.
So it's kind of interesting when Eamon did that grounding with us, and I really enjoy that. But while I was sitting there, I was very aware of how fast my heart was beating, with nervousness about doing this. Now, also put it in context, I work with large numbers of groups all the time. You know, I've delivered events for almost 1,000 people. More than happy to stand there in front of them. Yet here we are in a small group, and I've noticed this fear coming up with me. And that fear is... I've done a lot of work over the years, you know. I trained an NLP and master practitioner in NLP, and that was the first time when I really started to pay attention to, you know, the way we talk about these parts of ourselves. You know, there was part of me wanted to do this, but I wasn't too sure. There's this part of me that was scared, but I really wanted to push through. And we, you know, we're all like, people think that we're just this one personality, but we're not. We're all so many personalities going on in our lives. But what I've been able to work out is that from a very young age, I've always been afraid of getting in trouble. I've always been afraid of letting people down. I've always been afraid of getting things wrong and of not being good enough. And I've done a lot of work about trying to work out where that comes from. And I'm adopted from birth, and a little bit of that, this is all related into that. You know, my biological mum, she was a single, she had a boyfriend, you know, but when it turned out that she was pregnant, her family, which had a lot of priests and nuns in it, hid her in Donegal, took her away from her home, took her to Donegal for the duration of her pregnancy, and then took her to Belfast, and then I was taken off her. And to this day, I don't even know if she got to hold me or give me a cuddle or what that would have looked like. but there's a lot of research now around that, because that was definitely a traumatic experience for that woman. There's no way that she would have wanted that to be happening the way it was happening. And there's proof now that I would have, in the womb, I would have been picking up on that, and that would have been affecting me, even though pre-verbal, I'm still not even in the world, so to speak. And I've been doing a lot of studying this last year with Dr. Gabor Mate, and it was during this therapy work where I uttered words which I would never have thought would be there, because I've always consciously been able to make sense of why I was adopted. You know, it's nothing, you know, it was just circumstances. But it was the words that I uttered end of last year were, "It's not my fault." And that's actually something that has been, that's deep within my body. That's not here in the conscious head. It's in the conscious head now. But that's something which, so you imagine a child that believes that it's his fault. And you imagine a child that is afraid of not being loved and not being cared for. And that actually really makes sense now, why I've always been afraid of letting people down, why I don't like to get in trouble, you know, and that shame that comes with that. So it's been a huge revelation, but it's been a gradual process for me over the years. And so it still comes back, you know, and it'll always be there on some level. But for me now, it's good to be able to recognize it and accept it for what it is and give it a bit of space.
And Stephen, thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you very much. I'd always invite guests on the Coffee at 11 show to go as deep as they wish, and only as deep as they wish, but they're welcome to go as deep as they wish. And I suppose the objective, and you've nailed it, is that we get to know the person in the chair, because without that context, we just see a master firewalker, a master NLP practitioner, a guy with a very kind face and a lovely calm voice who talks people into doing crazy stuff, right, easily. So thank you for sharing that. And so do you think, Stephen, that subconsciously formed the work that you now do? Is that?
Absolutely, you know, because on the other side of that, you know, you've said yourself, I can calmly meet a group of people and I can somehow convince them. And it's not that I actually do convince them, I just hold the space and provide the sort of compassion and safety for people where they will step into their, or step out of their comfort zone and take on a new challenge. And that actually comes from the same experiences in my early life. You know, it's because it's being able to reach out to people, notice when people aren't comfortable, aren't scared, because what would I have been doing as a child? I would have been fixing things, you know, trying to make sure everybody was happy, because if they were happy, then I would be happy. So it's actually given me a great skill set at the same time, you know, and I think it's an interesting thing. We can sometimes look at parts of ourselves and parts of our personality and think, oh, this is a trait that I don't particularly like, but there's always a positive side in there. And at the core of it, you know, ignoring even just that positive side, that trait within you, that trait within me that was scared and afraid of not being loved, that actually had a very pure intention, which was to look after me. So no matter what, that part, even though as an adult, sometimes I feel like, you know, I'd rather not be scared about, you know, meeting 16 people on a Zoom call, you know. But actually, you know, if we go back to where that comes from, that's a very young way of thinking and a way of being that was there to protect me. And that's why for me, it's good to be kind to that part, to the positive intention, and it's worth honouring that.
You've clearly done a lot of work over the years, Stephen, on you. You know, you've been on a journey since birth, dare I say it, and we're seeing today the manifestation of that journey to date, and excited about where it's heading into the future. But you've certainly been on a journey ever since those early days. And the work with young offenders, do you want me asking about that work? Is that still ongoing in any shape or form?
Not really. It kind of it ran its course. You know, where I was working at that time, I went then into work with a private adventure company, and then it became, and I actually stayed there for too long, but it became a bit of a conveyor belt of work. You know, that it lacked the depth, which brought me back then to working for myself, and I was still doing quite a bit. Once I started working for myself, I was still doing quite a bit. But at the minute, most of my work is with adults, and it's individuals come for me usually because they're just trying to find something different. You know,
I get that. Yeah,
they don't even know what it is.
No, I get that, and thanks for touching on that. I just need to ask the question: was it ongoing? Would it be fair to say that, although, and I understand it became a bit of a conveyor belt, is it fair to say that for a lot of people that's better than nothing? They get brought in, experience something.
Well, the great thing about that time was it really helped me get an understanding of how to set up a business. That said, my first business went tits up after a few years. But it was a great adventure. I'd set up an adventure company in a little place called Gorchin in Tyrone, and had a good few years at doing that, and built up a great team, but a lot of that was for, as I reflect back to that, a lot of that was for what people would see. I still wasn't really, that I don't, yes, my heart was involved in that, but it was like this ambition to build up a huge, big business. Whereas actually, having a small business to me is so much nicer than having a big business. And I know you've quite a big team behind you, Colm, and it's different, but it's not me. I like being hands-on with people. I like working with people. That's where my real joy is. I get a real buzz out of setting everything up and bookings coming in and so on. But my buzz is working with people and sharing that experience with them, where you see somebody really step outside of their comfort zone, where you see people just having a bit of fun. I trained as in laughter yoga last year, and it's a great activity to do, because you see, when you're really laughing, you're present, completely present to just what is. And that's what I would get with people doing different outdoor activities. You just forget about everything else that's going on in the world. That's not even a conscious decision to forget about it. You're just so involved in what you're doing, and everything else disappears. And being able to share that with people and see people experience that it's just a real joy, real privilege.
Can see that in you. You've got a servant heart. Yeah, Lisa started the boat of both there. Servant's heart, my friend, servant spirit. And, I've met you one-on-one, well, it's group on one, if you like, small group on one, where you've brought us through that lovely work that you do. And you're absolutely present with each one of us. It's just wonderful to witness. You alluded to the fact that you don't really want a big business. You just want to work hands-on with people. My dad has this phrase: stop selling, start serving. And that's what you do. You serve all day. And the irony of that is then people want to buy, right? So you end up selling, if you like, because it's an irony within that. The first business went tits up. That's a business term, I believe.
Yeah. It's on all the business books that are worth reading.
Yeah. It's the technical description of when a business doesn't quite work. It's in the financial.
Yeah.
Love that. All right, good stuff. Listen, it's lovely journey so far. Really excited. Would you take us out into the wild world of firewalking? How hot coals?
Yeah, so when I started that first business, which was nearly 12 years ago now, there was a guy running a firewalk in Belfast, and it was aimed at business owners and entrepreneurs, and a guy that I knew that had just set up a business as well. He pointed it out to me, and we both went along. And I often say this to people at firewalks, I could stand there and give you a great talk about personal development and comfort zones and all of that, but chances are you'll not remember it, because people have so much other stuff going on. I don't remember a thing that guy said, but I do remember the 3 times that I walked across the fire that night, and I can remember the sensations and the feelings that were going on in my body as clear as day. So I always tell people, you never forget your first fire walk. It's just there. So I did that, and I had this bit of an idea that, because an adventure business in Ireland, it kind of usually is a bit quieter over winter, and I thought, I'll do fire walks. I could lead fire walks in the winter and do the other activities during the summer. But I never really pushed onto that. But about 4 years later, he got in touch with me and said, listen, Stephen, I'm moving to Dubai, and I have 3 fire walks in my diary for charities, and I don't really know somebody who would take them on and honour the price that I made with them. I was wondering if you could get trained as an instructor, would you take them on and honour the price? And I said, absolutely. So off I went to Sweden, expecting just to train on fire walking, and I didn't even research the course. I didn't know that we were doing glass walking and breaking boards and bricks with our bare hands. All this stuff was like, what? So every day I woke up and they'd tell us what we were doing. Like, no, this is too much, and we did a Native American sweat lodge as part of that, which really opened up a different spiritual side within me as well. But I did that, and I came back, and so I had my 3 bookings already in the diary. Actually, one of them didn't go ahead, but the other 2 did. And at this stage, my first business was gone, but I had another adventure business called Coasteering NI, which was jumping off cliffs in the sea, which is Marcel has been out a few times over the years. So I had that business, but it reached the stage where, well, actually I was planning then to go to India for 6 months to train with Sadhguru in yoga. And it just became a bit too, so I sold the coasteering business. The firewalking business could just quieten down until I came back. And it just reached a stage where it was becoming too rushed to go to India, so I canned that idea and just kept the firewalking side of things. And yeah, and it's just growing year on year. We do a lot. Last year we were, I think, in 5 different countries. If it wasn't for COVID, I'd be in Bali right now working. Wow. So it's brilliant.
Fantastic. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I did one fire walk. Wasn't with your good self. It was with Tony Robbins in the NEC in London, 2006, and it's absolutely one of those experiences you'll never forget. So, ladies and gentlemen, actually, there's a hands up. Anybody who's done a fire walk, hands up. Lisa and myself. Okay, the rest of you, you know where to go. Firewalk International. Eamon's putting the links in there, which is great. Great stuff. The jumping off cliffs, Marcel, fair play to you. Sounds a bit like, think about this. Walking on fire, what temperature is the fire, Stephen?
About 500 degrees Celsius.
Water boils at 100. Water boils at 100. I'm just putting that out there, right? And 500 degrees. And how long is a typical fire walk?
Most firewalks are about 4 normal strides for people. And then I train people as firewalk instructors as well, and then they will do, they'll walk much further, but we have people together. And I do it every so often, a firewalk called a 108, and we basically have 3 fires which will form a circle. And so each fire lane then is 12 foot. So you'll walk from fire to grass to fire to grass. And you basically walk at a circle so that you've walked over the fire 108 times. Which, like Keely's here, that was Keely's very, very first fire walk to do the 108. And it's not about the fire, it's about the connection again. It's that connection to self, the community of people that are there, and just to nature, and it's just powerful.
It's actually beautiful. Even the way you describe it, I saw Bridget with her head in her hands there, imagining walking on 3 sets of fire for 108 times. But there's a beauty to it. But it is, I mean, seriously, you jump off a cliff like Marcel is doing and you walk fire, right? There's very little you can convince yourself you can't do once you've done that. You mightn't want to, right? But once you've done it, you can't point and say, well, something else is going to be too hard. I mean, we're talking the upper end of challenge here. And you clearly love it. I'm really interested in that 108. I have seen that being promoted sometimes. I've never made it yet, but there's always time,
Yeah. It's, whenever I came back from Sweden, the first firewalk was then scheduled, I think, for 2 weeks, so time away from there. And I came back and I then had to get everything together, all the wood and all the resources and stuff. And I didn't really want to do my first firewalk with a real live group. So I pulled some friends together and used them as my test group, and did it at my friend's house, and godfather to their youngest. But Shane, he came to me and he said, could Ella do it? And I think Ella was 7 or 8 at the time. And I said, it's not really about whether Ella could do it. It's about whether or not Angie will let Ella do it. It's his wife. And she came over to speak to me and said, could she do it? And I said, if she believes she can do it, she can do it. And that's my simple view on it. There are some firewalk instructors that just won't entertain kids doing it, but if you hold the right space for kids and let kids get in touch with what's really going on for them, they can do anything too, but I always have to speak to parents when they come along with children to a firewalk about let this be the kid's experience, not what you want the kid to experience. I've seen so many parents that try to push kids into doing things, and that's when it becomes unsafe and dangerous, and it's not an enriching experience for the child. Always follow the child's lead is my view.
That's quite incredible. Yeah, I see Eamon the Bula Bus there and thumbs up. That's quite incredible, and I presume that little child did actually.
Yeah, she walked it, and still to this day, if something's difficult or anything, that will come up in conversation. It's, you walked on fire. Like, of course you can do this. It's...
Forgive me for making a note here, but I thought it was an unfortunate choice of words where you decided to use your friends as a real live group. A real live. And the fact that you're able to talk about their daughter still means you're probably still friends.
Yeah. Well, I'm godfather to their other daughters, so.
Good stuff. All's well that ends well. Wonderful stuff. And of course, the trip to Sweden, it started off as fire walking, you got into glass walking and all this other stuff that has come from it, and you clearly love it. You mentioned you've worked with a group of 1,000 at one point.
Yeah, that was last year in Texas, last April. And all being well, we'll be back again next April. So it was for a company called Raising Canes. So they do chicken, basically. And they basically hired this huge YMCA summer camp place with cabins. Spent a lot of money getting it all done up, this huge stage and stuff. But they brought us in to do the firewalk. So I think it was 9 or 10 of us from here went. And then we got a team of 23, I think it was, over there. That basically it was staff that worked at the summer camp. So we spent a bit of time training them up, and yeah, we did this huge fire. And had it was actually 850 people ended up walking the fire. Huge, big challenge, and but it was brilliant. Actually, it was one of the highlights of my career, I think, working career.
Well, I think it's one of the highlights so far. I think you're on a journey, and you need to go bigger, but you clearly, it's constant improvement for you the whole time. Logistically, was that significantly challenging as it sounds?
Whenever I first started running events in other countries, I took on too much responsibility. So I would have been trying to source all the things that I needed. And now I actually mostly just Google the things that I need. So in the States, I'll just go on to Home Depot, make a shopping list, give it to them, and then it's just there. So it's much easier. Whereas before I was ordering and working out where to get it delivered to and stuff like that, and now it's much easier. The only problem that time round was the wood was not split wood. So it was basically a big pile of full-on logs. So there was like 3 of our team spent 2 days with a splitter. You know, because this fire, it was about 5 feet high, 9 feet wide, and I think it was 32 feet long. So it was a huge amount of wood, but they just spent days. And actually my dad and my uncle were over with me on that one, and they actually spent their time smoking cigars and chopping wood. They just loved it.
That sounds unbelievable. Now,
Yeah.
5 feet, did you say 5 feet wide, 9 feet tall, or the other way around?
5 feet tall, 9
tall.
feet wide, and yeah, about 30 feet long.
Okay, so am I right in thinking, so it burns for days, is that right, until it comes down to
That burned for 2 hours.
2 hours? Okay.
And then we actually moved the embers from there to the separate walking lanes where the participants were walking. So that's why it was such a large team. You know, it was over 30 people. So there was a lot of moving pieces. But it came together beautifully, and they definitely want us back. So it was great.
Fantastic. And Kathy Mera has joined us from New Hampshire. So Kathy, she's when you mentioned Home Depot, she's got it all in her head. She can see how this thing could work. If you're ever looking for a firewalk instructor for your cross-country girls, you know where to go. Stephen's your man, yeah? Good stuff. Stephen, lovely journey. Thank you for taking us through there. What's it like in COVID for you now? Do you mind me asking?
COVID's been interesting. You know, I was leading a retreat in the Sahara when things were really starting to intensify here. And so we were having conversations there about what's it going to be like when we get back home? Can we definitely get back home? And we did. I certainly have gone through periods of grieving over this last while, you know, because certainly in those first, you know, coming back in the Sahara, I think I had 3 cancellations of events, you know, and come back, and within a week everything was just gone. And it's like, well, you know, what am I going to do now, you know? And I still had some stuff. So yeah, I did go through probably about 3 weeks of being lost and grieving about it. And but actually now I'm in a really nice routine, and we've, you know, family life is great. You know, like the other day we had dinner, and then we had a dance off in the kitchen, you know, the 4 of us. And yeah, it's been interesting. What way the business is going to work long term, I don't know yet, you know, but I'm not it's back to this, you know, I always teach people about, you know, don't worry about the things you can't control. Yet, you know, I still have to remind myself of that at times. It'll be what it is, you know. I think it'll all work out eventually. My only fear is this I really dislike the term, you know, this social distancing, you know, because we've talked about connection, such a huge part of what so important to people. I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, well said. I do think I would probably share a view, and many people in the cafe would as well, that there'll be repercussions, societal repercussions after all this lockdown. A term, physical distancing, was mooted at one point, but it just never caught on. Social distancing has remained, even though it's more about physical distancing to keep us safe. Look, lovely journey. I thank you for sharing the fact that you grieved. Whole idea here in the Coffee at 11 show is to get people in to be real about what's going on for them, so that other people can hear it and say, you know what, I'm okay. So if Stephen grieved, my grieving was okay too. And then you got into a space where you relaxed into it. Dare I say, it will be what it will be, and you know you'll be fine. You know you'll be fine over time. So Well done, you. Going to go to Q&A, if I may, Stephen, from the floor, or comment perhaps from the floor in a moment, if that's okay. But I'm going to ask you, before I do, as I ask every guest, for one tip. What would you tell your nearest and dearest or your best friend? You will get through COVID and come out in great shape the far side, or in as good shape as you can the far side, by doing blah. What's the one blah for Stephen, please?
Self-care. It's very simple. Self-care. Self-care looks very different for all of us, and there's lots of gurus and teachers and all sorts out there telling you do this or do that, and no, do what's good for you, and that'll help.
Thank you for that. There was rapturous silent applause there for that as soon as you said it, and there wasn't a moment's hesitation when I asked the question. It was self-care. That's it. Eamon and I came up with the phrase some time back, POYOOMF, POYOOMF. It's an acronym for put on your own oxygen mask first. We hear it, we use it when planes were a thing, right? Put on your own oxygen mask first, but it's great advice. We need to look after ourselves first before we can possibly be of service to those around us. So self-care, beautiful stuff. Let's go to a comment from the floor or question from the floor. Who'd like to ask a question of my special guest? Just wave at the camera. I'll bring you in. Don't be shy. Sarah Ward.
How are you? Lovely to listen to you, Stephen. I'm fascinated about this. I'm just wondering, how do you get when you're standing there? I mean, as a youngster, I used to jump off boats and jump off high hills and stuff like that. No fear whatsoever. But I suppose I'm a little bit older now. Walking on glass or fire is the one I'm interested in, actually. Fire, walking on fire. How would I get my head around that before I go and do it?
Stop trying to get your head around it.
Okay, just do it, is it? It's just you walk on it. And how do you know that, like, has anyone ever burnt themselves, or, do you know, is it just...
Yeah, of course they have.
Okay.
Yeah. But the thing that I always say to people is, what do we do as humans? We always think towards the worst. What happens if I burn is always one of the most popular questions people ask me at a firewalk, and my answer is, and what if you don't?
Yeah. Like, if I took my husband to this now, I'd love, like, this year we're going to...
We don't burn husbands, I'm sorry.
You don't burn... Oh, that's such a pity.
Yeah, it's a different service.
I'd love him to try it. I don't know if I'd succeed because he's quite stubborn, but I'd love him to try it because I think he underestimates himself quite a bit, and I think if he did this, but he's quite reserved, and I'd love him to do it. How would I convince him to do it? Just bring him up and just throw him in?
I would just turn up with him and just say, you know what, we're going to go to this. I always tell people, you can't actually decide if you're going to walk on a fire or not until you're standing in front of the fire. Everything else is in your imagination, and that you could have a very positive imagination towards it or a very fearful imagination towards it, but it's still in your imagination, and it's only whenever you take off your socks and shoes and you stand in front of it, that's when you really know what's going on for you. I do a lot of the corporate firewalks I do are, the participants don't know that they're going to do a firewalk until they're there. And I often will get people that are pushing back, just saying, no, I'm not doing that, and I spend a lot of time telling people, actually, the world doesn't need more firewalkers. What the world needs is people who will make conscious decisions about what they're doing and not making decisions based from fear. Or what other people might think of them. We make decisions all the time, but they're very rarely conscious. And so people will often be pushing back and saying, no, I'm not doing it. And I'll say, that's absolutely fine. Don't do it. You don't have to do it. And some of the people that push back the most, they're the people that are coming forward, going first. I always get people, take off your socks and shoes no matter what. And that's twofold. One is it gets people connected to the earth, so they become a bit more connected to themselves. And by taking off their socks and shoes, they've gone a bit further than they thought they would have done. So even if they don't walk in the fire, they've gone a bit further than what they would have done, because it's much safer to just say, I'm not doing it, and keep my socks and shoes on.
Lovely stuff.
So,
very good.
Just turn up.
Okay, I do.
Sarah, thank you for that. That was lovely. Great question and lovely answer. Folks, I said it at the start of the show. Hasn't this man got the most beautiful voice? Such a calming influence. Just, you know, like you just hear him saying, just take off your socks and shoes, see what happens. and there's 850 people standing there saying, what next, Stephen? What next? It's brilliant. It's absolutely a joy having a conversation with you. Thank you for taking the time out this morning.
Colm, could I just please ask Stephen a quick question? I'm not as nervous as yesterday, so it should be okay. Stephen, can I just ask you, you mentioned that you support the youth. Do you also support the parents of the youth? Because as parents, half the time we're very unconscious of our own behavior and how we treat our teenagers or children. Like I always say, it starts from the cradle. And because we take on so many habits and values and conform to what our parents want us to be, would you work with the parent and maybe help them support where they can support their teenagers? For most importantly, because the behavior is communication and there's always meaning underneath that behavior. So for me personally, it's great to support the teens and we need to be there, but would the aim not be to support the parents, to work with them, for them then in turn provide a safe place in the home? Because either home is going to be the teen's safe place or school or organizations like yourself. So I'm just a bit curious, how do you work around that with the parents?
Well, where I was talking about that was mainly just at a fire walk. Colm had mentioned self-led life, which is something which I'm developing and starting to put out there, and part of that is certainly working with parents from a point of view. Just anybody that can do any work on themselves will improve the life of their kids.
Yeah.
Full stop. You know, it doesn't really even need discuss. But it's trying to do that in a compassionate way. You know,
yeah.
One of the things with a lot of parents is guilt. You know, I didn't do this well enough. I didn't do that well enough, and I'm still not doing it well enough. And it's to work on itself to sort of understand why we parent the way that we do, why we are the way that we are, and then once we can give that space, then we can start work on it, you know. But it takes time, and that's where I'm doing the one-to-one work with people. But it's not specifically just aimed at parents, you know. It's whatever problems people want to try and work on, because we all have them.
Oh, we all have walls to knock. There's no doubt about it, because I work with parents, and when I started this, it was very much take my child or my teen and fix them, but there's nothing to fix, you know. And I wanted to be a play therapist because I'm from Belgium and I didn't go to school here. I just couldn't continue on. But anyway, long story. And Tony Humphreys would say, work with the parents, because that's where the child is going home to. And I kind of see both, but I also see, and I have teenagers myself, teenagers are lost, they really are, and they're starting to act out more and more. And I know from the parents that I have and my experience in general, parents are they're stuck, they don't know how to deal with it or how to handle with it. And it's kind of fire and fire, if you like, instead of once you provide that safe and talk with your teen instead of to your teen, and stop personalizing what they're doing. If they come in and smack the door, or don't fucking shut that door like that, you know there's something going on, and it's to take 5 and say, look, this is not really about me. There's something going on in my teen's life, and I need to figure out how can I give my trust to him or her, that they can have open conversations with us, you know.
And Sandra, thank you for that. That's lovely insight and a lovely conversation between yourself and Stephen. Thank you for that.
I know.
It actually brought me right back to the early work you did, Stephen, and the guys acting out on the 3rd residential. So it brought me right back there. Right, we're going to go to Princess Shelley.
Hey everybody, I can totally relate to what you're saying there, Colm. There's definitely a hypnotic quality to your voice, Stephen, and thank you so much for sharing with us today. And you know, I was thinking there as I was looking around the cafe during yours and Colm's conversation, like I studied a few years ago, I have a degree in sociology, and I was looking around the cafe, and when you were talking to us about your early childhood journey, everybody was looking engaged, and they were concerned for what you may have gone through. And then we're talking about burning Sarah's husband, and everybody's like in raptures laughing, and Bridget is like horrified at the thoughts of the firewalk. And you know, this cafe really does encapsulate, look at us all, we're all here together from all over the place listening to somebody's wonderful story, and thank you for being so raw with us today and so open. We're joined in the cafe by Ruwaida. She's joining us from Saudi Arabia, and for those of us tuning in for the replay a little bit later on, we have 10 minutes before the interview goes live, where we all get a little chat and we all get to know each other and settle into the cafe. And we were wondering what would Ruwaida be having for lunch in Saudi Arabia. It's probably not a chicken and stuffing sandwich. So Colm asked her what she's having, and we understand that Ruwaida, you were having a fruit salad that she hopes it doesn't disappoint us. So we were just all a little bit interested there. So thanks for that, Ruwaida, satisfying our curiosity. Which is great. Then when we heard earlier on, and I felt my neck tense a little bit when we were discussing, when you and Colm were mentioning about this arrowhead that you broke against the wall. Like, that's so brave. And Eamon popped into the chat. I've seen the arrow, ladies and gents. It's a true story. And then when you were talking about all the inner multiple personalities, which again, I thought that was just me. It's so great to know. But Eamon says he can relate to that, and he calls it his inner board of directors. So thanks for that, Eamon. And then Sandra Schmidt, thanks for joining us in the cafe. Sandra, when you were talking about the scientific research that supports the idea that somebody in utero, before you're even in the world, can be influenced by whatever's going on, what your mother is going through, your biological mother is going through. And Sandra says to us that Gabor Maté, who is, I looked there, is a Canadian physician, and he explains all about the baby in the womb and how exposed to traumas it can influence later outcomes in life. So thank you very much for that, Sandra. I'll have a look at him. AB then goes on to say, I heartily recommend doing firewalking. So thanks for joining us in the cafe, AB. And Eamon says, I want to firewalk with you, Stephen. There's the intention set. Boom. So we look forward to hearing how that goes, Eamon, when the time is right. It's certainly something I'd be interested to hear how it goes for you. At that point then, Stephen, Eamon popped in all your links. So anybody in the cafe, go to the chat box. You can access Stephen's groups there, online, LinkedIn, Facebook, and the webpage. So do have a look at that. Lisa, who is here regularly in the cafe, Lisa says, highly recommend firewalking. As soon as it's done, you will want to do it again. So thanks for that, Lisa. I can't say I'm dying to do it, but I just feel like I'm in a cafe today full of superheroes. That we've had a few that do it. Tim Kelly has said, again, he's our resident pup, keeping a low profile at the moment, but delighted just to join us, Tim. He says, I did a firewalk with Brian Moore a number of years ago, as well as board breaking and walking on Lego. Ishk. It was an amazing experience, and as Colm said, once you've done that, you really feel like you can do anything. So thanks for that, Tim. And then AB came back and said, Stephen, spot on what he says about firewalking. You will never forget your first firewalk. And it's true, once you've completed a walk, you do wonder, what else have I been telling myself I can't do, but actually I can. I do believe firewalk is life-changing, and that's my experience anyway. So thank you very much for that and being into the cafe. So one quick question then, Stephen, you might want to just unmute your mic. James Finnegan is popping into us and says, if Stephen does not burn husbands, is that the same policy for wives? Maybe he's asking for a friend, I'm not sure.
He can email me later.
Love it. So so Lisa appreciates you sharing your story. Stephen loves how you concentrate on the positives, and I think we all need a firewalk. Oh, here we go, throwing this out there, Lisa. Maybe a coffee at 11 firewalk. So I'm not sure about that. I'll take the photograph or something. And Dean says, I highly recommend the instructor training with Stephen, life-changing. And Marcel, I was watching you there, Marcel. You were so excited when he was talking about all the adventures, and I love to see the excitement on your face. And Marcel said, brilliant interview. Sean Connery wouldn't have a look in with that voice. I agree. Congrats, and hope to meet up again soon, buddy. So yes, so that is just fantastic. Thank you so much for all the comments, everybody. It really is. It's not just the conversation between our guest Stephen and Colm. It really is all of you that contribute and make the cafe what it is. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you, Stephen, for being so open and honest and a wonderful guest. And at this point, I'll pop you back over to the big cheese. Colm, thank you.
Oh, lovely, 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 Princess Shelley. Thank you for that. Yeah, indeed, Bula Bus there from James Finnegan for the Princess Shelley section. It's always a pleasure, always a pleasure. I love it because I get to kick back and listen to what's been going on in the cafe. And there you are, Stephen Brown, superheroes and 007, right? And it's all coming back to you. Good man. Go you, go you. Okie dokie, folks, it's been a pleasure having you all in the cafe today. Thank you for joining us on the Coffee at 11 show. In particular, pleasure to have Stephen Brown in. I mean, that's what made it. You're the glue today that brought us all together, Stephen. For that, we're forever eternally grateful. Thank you. Bula Bus. And delighted to invite you back tomorrow for my special guest, Angela McGlanahy. Angela is an incredible character. I met her several years ago when I was doing a talk in Donegal. Angela was sharing a podium with me, and she told her story of overcoming. And Angela, by her own admission, was a heavy drinker and a heavy smoker back in the day, and decided to take charge of her life. And she lost 70 pounds. That's 5 stone. Don't know what it is in kilos, but she lost 70 pounds. But losing the weight through diet and exercise was only the start of the journey for her. It's what it has done for her, and how it's changed her mindset is what I'm delighted and excited to introduce Angela into the cafe to hear. So looking forward to that. So if you've got time tomorrow, please pop in and honour Angela with your time. Thank you. An absolute pleasure, Stephen, having you join us in the Coffee Level Show and the Bula Bus. Again, rapturous applause going on all over the place, having you here. So thank you for that. I want to thank the team as ever. We're nothing without our teams. Princess Shelley, the Heart, the Monk, Eamon Smith, thank you for keeping us safe and secure. Katrina O'Brien in advance for making this all beautiful. She's going to top and tail it later on this evening. We push it out there, by the way. And when you see it on social media, please, if you feel it appropriate, share it on, please. Spread the love. And I want to thank wigwam.ie, SME peer support, for their ongoing support. But I finish the show, as I always do, by saying, Stephen, namaste.
Namaste. It's good. Thank you.